the actual motion that I'm about. I'm sorry, I just turned on recording. So I'm going to propose the following. Based on the conclusion by the health officer that the activities proposed in the proposal from the Wassel group are safe, that the EDC would fund up to $5,000 for to communicate for these purposes, contingent on that we're communicating these activities to local residents as this plan describes, and contingent on a mask enforcement program or a mask communication program that is satisfactory to the select board when they vote on the 17th. Since I want, yeah, so that's my proposal. That's my motion. So we'll have a second, if there's a second to the motion, and then we can discuss the motion if we need to make changes to it. So would anyone second that motion?
I'll second it.
All right. So now discussion. Is there any, so again, it's based on the health officer's information that these activities are safe. We fund up to $5,000, communicating to the local community, and contingent on a plan for, I don't want to know what word to use. It's not quite enforcement, polite enforcement of the mask ordinance to be presented at the select board on the 17th. Robbie, are you okay presenting something briefly to the select board on the 17th?
Yeah, you said 10-page single space. Is that what you said?
The big font, 60-point font, so it's not that many words.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, so that's the key to the. Is there any discussion of that motion? Is it people comfortable with that? That's what we're voting on. Does anyone want to modify it, or?
Can I just ask for
you to add?
Sorry, one second. Mika and then Joe, and then I'm not sure, there might be one other person who was talking, but Mika first and Joe.
I just wanted some clarification. So is it, I think this would be a question for you, Robbie. So are you sure that those people would be available, or is this sort of contingent on whether or not there are people available to do the enforcement?
I mean, if you go forward with it, I can't say for sure there'll be the people that I have in mind are going to be available, like the parking people. However, I can probably I can round up a couple of additional personnel, one way or the other, and we can have additional presence on the street if that's what you're looking for.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted that clarification.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry, I've forgotten now. Who else wanted to discuss the motion? Joe, go ahead.
I more than anything else, I have a question. It's just the answer I'm just not familiar with is, so as I understand it, this is going to be marketed just to Woodstock folks, and it's going to be advertised in the Standard. I'm curious, how many towns is the Standard stolen? Anybody know? I don't. They're not sold exclusively in Woodstock. I know they're distributed Pomfret, West Windsor, Plymouth. I don't know where else. So are we really think that it's going to be just a Woodstock resident event? No. I have a problem really accepting that. I don't think that's possible. That's just how I feel about it.
Okay, I think that's fair. I mean, I think technically it would be, I think maybe I should amend my motion to say that the communication of these events will be limited to advertising in the Vermont Standard.
Okay.
Maybe I'll say that, and then yeah. So I'll modify the motion to say, based on the opinion of the health officer that the events described are safe, and based on that the marketing for this will be just in the Standard, and contingent on the police proposing a brief, simple plan for polite enforcement, that we would fund up to $5,000 for these activities. Are there any other comments about the motion before we take a vote?
John, David Green.
Go ahead, David.
You used the word contingent a couple times. If you would add it in there one more time, that it complies with the day of state of Vermont health and safety rules for COVID.
Meaning that they could change.
Yes. So today everything is fine, but come December 10th, they may change.
Well, it's interesting. I understand the purpose of that. I don't think anyone would have any objection. We obviously don't want to violate it. However, what we're voting on is just the funding. The select board,
Correct.
we don't have the
Okay.
we don't have the ability or the responsibility to say that the town can do these things or not. So maybe what we can do is suggest to the select board that they, in other words, what will happen is if we authorize the funding, the money will be spent by the time the day of comes around.
Okay.
So I don't know how to, you're making a very reasonable point, but I just don't know how to incorporate it in our.
I'm sure if the select board is going to approve it, they can just add that in on their piece, that it complies with everything the day of activities.
Yeah.
And that really becomes Beth's problem, I guess.
Right.
Because like you said, EDC has done their share and everybody else has by that.
Well,
point.
actually, I think we could, there's no reason for us not to put it into our proposal to basically say we will fund this and we are expecting that the organizers of these events will be complying with the day of regulations. I think that's
perfectly
I
fine
accept
to me.
that as a amendment. So, all right. So based on the opinion of the health officer that the events described are safe, that the activities will be marketed only through the Vermont standard, that that we'll have a simple plan presented to that the select board approves for polite enforcement, and that the organizers will ensure that they comply with contingent on the day of the rules on the day of the events, that we would approve the funding. Beth, last comment, I think.
Well, I'm just concerned because we will have made financial commitments. I mean, we can cancel it the day of that or the day before, but we will have paid.
We will not, right. We will not,
for-
recall any of the money. No. We're not putting that on you.
Okay.
We're just expecting that whatever funds are, that you will comply with those on the day of event, and that you'll
Yes.
return any unspent funds to us.
Well, we won't. Yes.
But you won't have any, I understand. In
Yes.
case you do. In other words, we're just stating an expectation that you will comply with those so that we don't overlook David's point, which I think is a good point. Okay. If I see any other comments, okay, then the motion has, I'm not an expert on Robert's rules. The motion has been made, amended, and seconded. All in favor, could you raise your hands, or could you, I have to take a roll call here because, or if you turn your cameras on. All right, let me just go through. Larry?
Yes.
In favor. Julia is in favor. Joe?
No.
Opposed? Courtney? In favor. Michael? Thumbs up. It's 5. Okay. Mika?
Aye.
Favor. And myself in favor. And Alita is not here because her sister had an emergency. Okay, so it passes by a vote of 7-1. Is that correct, Sally? Did I count right? Well, okay, it's either 6-1 or 7-1. We have a quorum and it passes. Okay, and so we are going to make a recommendation, that recommendation to the select board, and I will make sure that the context of this discussion, which is embodied in the contingencies, is communicated at the select board meeting. I will make sure I'll be there to communicate this so that the points, the concerns, and the ideas that we had, Joe, including yours, even though you voted against it, the concerns that we all had are made clear to the select board so that they understand it. Although we have 2 select board members here who are personally, listening to the discussion. And Robbie, thank you for taking on the role and putting that together for the 17th. So, okay. All right, good discussion. Now back to the longer term issues. So we've got the housing group and the business environment group. Thank you very much, Charlie, for continuing to work on this. Do you want to just give us a quick update? No decisions to be made, but tell us what's going on.
Sure. I don't know if I can do anything quickly these days, but I'll do my best.
Politician.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you give a politician an opportunity to speak, and anyway, yes, thank you. So the EDC did authorize the formation of a Woodstock Housing Group, and the specific task given to it was to evaluate the 8 recommendations that were made in the housing study that was done by Doug Kennedy and Associates and delivered in December of 2018. And then to make a recommendation after exploring different ways to possibly achieve some of the recommendations that were in the study, to make recommendations to the EDC and to the select board. We have gone by fits and starts. COVID certainly impacted our meeting schedule. We had some folks that had originally volunteered and then decided it wasn't necessarily for them. But we do have a 5-member group that has met a couple of times. That is myself, Susan Ford, Gretchen Smith, Roger Logan, Jennifer Raymond, and myself. And we are tasked with reviewing those recommendations. So I asked each member of the committee to read the report. As you recall, it's about a 132-page report with several additions or addendum for comments from citizens, a very exhaustive survey that we had done. I believe 500 people responded to the survey. So for that, for local surveys, that's very, very good. And so we reviewed the recommendations first in a meeting and then said, well, things have changed in the marketplace. This is 2 years old. Certainly COVID has happened. What has changed in terms of the housing needs? So we went out to get a little more information. Instead of recommissioning another update, which I don't think anybody wants to do, spend more money on that. We tried to just isolate those things that may have changed. One is the real estate market. What's changed? Well, considerable, as a lot of you would be able to attest to. So Gretchen Smith, who is a realtor, did check with the MLS listings and showed that the increase in the number of houses that have sold through MLS is substantial, and most properties are selling for 20% over what they would normally sell for. The inventory is smaller now, and the length of time properties on the market is also shorter, much shorter. The second question we asked is, what is the effect of long-term occupancy by second homeowners as COVID refugees? There is no real easy way to tell this. There's anecdotal evidence. Able Waste, who has a lot of clients, they sold their business to Casella, but they have a lot of clients in Woodstock, Bridgewater, Plymouth, Reading. They had an increase of 900 different residential stops. Another person we wanted to talk to was LOA Property Services. Susan talked with them, and there's at least 40 to 50 families that are occupying their second home as their primary home right now. Usually those folks may come in at Memorial Day and leave in Columbus Day. They came in April and they're still here, according to information. Another thing that we looked at is student population. So what has happened there? And we checked in with the interim superintendent of the Central Supervisory Union, who is Sherry Souza. She shared their board books and the different data as to the number of schools, students enrolled. There was a rumored to be 90 new kids in the school system. So we tried to verify that number. And it's difficult to figure out because it's at different times of year, and some kids have opted for homeschooling and are not included in their census data. Other kids are remote and they are included, but nevertheless, the numbers of students enrolled in the public schools here in Woodstock has definitely gone up. Another thing we're looking at is the number of registered voters. And in 2016, we had 2,900, 2,906, 2018, 2,933, and in 2020, 2,985 for the number of registered voters in Woodstock. So that is also a market increase. And the Board of Civil Authority is looking at that list on a regular basis. So really looking at those numbers. So when that's all in the context of trying to see what has changed, what's different. And so we don't think there's been any relief on the affordable, on the housing front. So we did look at those 12 recommendations. They went everywhere from do nothing, let the market take care of itself, or as a town to actually invest in new housing units. That specific recommendation was to work to diversify, to actively promote housing development on appropriate sites. So there's a wide variety. Where we came down on for a couple of recommendations was two, without a scientific process. One is to ensure the percent of town's employees can afford to live in Woodstock. And the second one was to work to diversify ownership, rental, and pricing and the form of housing to make room for younger and moderate income households. So those are the two. And the question from there is that what we want to do next is consider the different principles that might guide us. And one is that building a large congregate housing development at this time is really not practical given the cost of construction and the cost of real estate. However, that could come down in the future, and the town should continue to look at different parcels of land that may lend themselves to building a number of units. A second is renovating or converting existing housing units into affordable quality rental units was supported by the consensus of the group. We just spent time discussing various properties along the Route 4 corridor that could be converted into affordable long-term rentals. We discussed various ways that might happen. And the way that the town might be a convener or a facilitator among different groups that are already involved in that arena, whether it's the Twin Pines Housing Trust or Woodstock Community Trust. So then our next step, what we're really talking about is to explore some specific recommendations within the context of those discussions to identify specifically what can the town do. And give you some examples. And then what we envision for that is a public meeting and inviting people to that to come up with their specific things that they would recommend to help with converting some of those existing units. I'll just give you a couple of examples and then I'll go away. One is to offer some financial incentives, such as to rehabilitate existing rental units by offering a 1 to 2 grant to provide owners of 1 to 4 unit apartment building in exchange for an agreement to keep the rents affordable. So NeighborWorks of Western Vermont has proven that this approach in Bennington works. That resulted in better quality apartments for affordable rents. In Bennington, the grant amounts are capped at $7,000, excuse me, so the owner has to kick in $14,000, demonstrate that the unit is high quality and commit to keeping the rent affordable for 5 years. So that's one model we might look at. A second is perhaps the town could provide subsidies to individuals or organizations who are converting existing space into those affordable unit apartments. So we don't know what the figure of that is. It could be as much as $40,000 per unit, according to some others. Another thing, and last one, is to look at possibly issuing a grant or a loan from EDC funds to purchase land on which affordable housing can be built. Right now, market prices are very high and makes that very difficult. We've all done the parlor game of where would you build that? What are the problems with that particular property? Is it in the right price range? But to be open to properties that might come up. Safford Common, by the way, is looking to build 4 additional units beginning at the end of this month, and those are for home ownership. So those are 2 separate buildings, so 2 duplexes that they're building for home ownership, which is an extension, and that's done by Twin Pines Housing Trust. So that, Mr. Chair, that is where we are, and our next step is really to have that public meeting. Happy to answer any questions you may have or any suggestions.
All right, any questions of Charlie? Kareem?
Hi. Charlie, very nice job at the election, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I must have honked at you at least 12 times that day. It's good to refresh our memories on this. It's a big undertaking. It's a complex project, because there are so many different options also. And each one of those options has its own financial implication. And not to add to the financial analysis of this, but any option that might, even in a remote fashion, impact property taxes, whether it's positively or negatively, we have to make sure that it's incorporated in the analysis. For example, when you talk about the word subsidies that would be offered by the town to a developer, et cetera, right? These need to be funded. And I just want to make sure that, you know, the funding doesn't necessarily create a burden on other citizens of the village or the town of Woodstock. So that's the only point I'm trying to make, actually, to summarize, is wherever relevant, please make sure that the analysis includes, you know, any impact to property taxes, be it negative or positive.
And thank you for that. I mean, that is really looking at the next stage of looking at specific recommendations, whether it's tax stabilization agreements, and that has its own set of issues, because if you agree to do that, then the rest of the taxpayers in the town have to pick up the bill.
Right.
And so what is the implication of that? But, you know, so we definitely want to think about all those. There are concerns about increasing the density of development, depending on what neighborhood you live in. And that's an issue, but the idea of accessory dwelling units is one that would be an easy way to increase the number of affordable units without a huge project. But the question is where? And is it a separate building? Is it attached? I mean, they're already permitted in many ways. So all of those things, you're right. So we have to evaluate each suggestion with that impact as to who's going to pay for this.
Okay.
And for how long.
Other comments or questions for Charlie? Yeah, okay, Charlie, I have one quick. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Mika, go ahead.
I'd just like to know when that meeting will be held, the public meeting that you were talking about.
No, we haven't scheduled it yet, but we will make
Okay.
it public. Yeah, and I've got a Zoom account now that doesn't log off after 40 minutes. So I know that we've all been through that experience. But we will definitely make it public and invite people to come. And we really want to hear the ideas that people have that are specific. And I've had brief conversations with folks about, is it a zoning issue? Is it a regulatory issue? Is it a money issue? So just trying to figure out what those are.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Charlie, would you pass on to the other members of the group that everyone really appreciates the work that you guys are doing, and we look forward to that's terrific. So
Okay, thank you. All right.
Okay, and the last item on the agenda, similar. Sorry, similar to this, the other another long-term initiative was something that we had been vaguely calling the business environment group effort. And what I'd like to propose is that we form a group. There are already 4 EDC members who've expressed an interest in this: Elizabeth, Reeves, Joe, Larry, and myself. And so with the rest of your approval, we would kind of launch this with a few other people from the community to participate. We haven't met yet. In fact, the purpose of tonight is to sort of get your concurrence or suggestions for what the scope of work for this group might be. And I'd like to propose that it would be the following 3 things. The first is to recommend, policies, if any, that the municipal policies that we think could accelerate economic development. And so I think that would entail kind of looking at the policies of the town, but in particular, first talking to people who have started businesses here, who have brought businesses here, who have opened businesses here, or who currently operate businesses, whether those are merchants or other types of businesses that aren't retail businesses, and to try to understand and other kinds of economic activity, builders, maybe bankers, I don't know, but to get a good sense of what municipal policies might be constraining the growth of our economy. And obviously there are going to be times when those policies might conflict with other policies that we would want to have. And so in particular, for example, with the Planning Commission or you know, or with the historical society, things of that sort. So Sally, we would look to you, you know, to advise us on who we might add to this group. Maybe someone from the Planning Commission would be willing to join the group and sit in to make sure that they were at least aware of what we were discussing, and you know, and could perhaps make suggestions or at least help us understand what those policies are. Not to say that the Planning Commission has policies that are constraining growth. I think our first step is to talk to businesses to understand if there are any policies that are doing so. But anyway, so that's sort of the first idea. Sally,
I can do
Sally,
that.
hold on for 1 minute. I'll give you the first chance to comment, but let me just continue with the scope. So number one is policy recommendations, municipal policy recommendations that might help to accelerate economic development. Second is what we might call rejuvenation, village rejuvenation continued, or downtown rejuvenation continued, in particular to look at ways in which the buildings, which to rejuvenate ways and initiatives to rejuvenate key buildings in the downtown area. And I would describe that as from Maple Fields to the town hall. There are obviously a handful of kind of private and commercial and residential buildings which sort of stand out as not being in the right condition. And what can we do? What, if anything, can we do about that? And third is to identify types of businesses and possibly specific businesses that we would like to recruit to come to Woodstock, and to consider to what extent we should try to do that, and to whom we should try to recruit. So that's the proposed scope for this group, and they would come back to the EDC and ultimately to the select board if there were funding involved to recommend and further discuss. You know, the group wouldn't make any decisions, but to recommend and discuss initiatives that we could take. So let me ask for comments from anyone here. There's mostly EDC members, but others. If you're comfortable with that scope, and if there are other things you think should be included, or if you think any of those things should be omitted from our agenda. Okay, I'm sorry, I said Sally, you would have the first. Did you want to make?
Yeah, that's okay. I was just saying, yes, I think it's a great idea to get the Planning Commission involved, and I can certainly pass on that message and let you know, so that if you actually, I will see if there's anybody in particular that would like to be part of this discussion. Otherwise, I will be a conduit for relaying messages to the Planning Commission.
Okay, great. Yeah, if we could get one member of the Planning Commission to be a member of this group, we would welcome it. Otherwise, as you say, we'll use you as a vehicle for back and forth communication. But it would be even better. I think you're saying the same thing, right? It'd be even better if we could find one person to be willing to do it.
Yep.
Okay, great. Any other comments about the scope of this?
I have a question, John.
Go ahead, Joe.
Are we going to welcome citizen, one, two citizens to be a part of this group?
That depends. No, I'm kidding. Yes, it would definitely. We're definitely going to. I would think that we would, you know, we have, Larry is a retired business owner. You are a current business owner. I would think we might want to get perhaps one more merchant or retailer, or perhaps a business owner that isn't a retailer. We might want to have an attorney. We have someone from the Planning Commission. We might want to have a realtor. I don't know. We'd have to think, but absolutely. So I don't want the group to be too big, but if we could have 3 or 4 people.
That's open to discussion. I mean, we
Absolutely.
can discuss that and welcome that opportunity if available.
No, of course. Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe the first thing we would do is just the 4 of us on the EDC, you, Larry, myself, and Elizabeth, might just brainstorm about who else we would like to have join us. And if any of you would like to join or have suggestions for who that might be, feel free to contact any of the 4 of us. So, all right, any other comments about the scope? It is a bit of a mishmash of topics, but I think there are 3 important topics, all of which relate to the vibrancy of the environment. So we're kind of putting together in a task force. Any other comments? No? Okay, very good. I think that is it. Is there any? Well, we don't have any additions or deletions to the agenda. Don't we have to have, isn't there a new business that we have to ask? Oh, I guess I was supposed to ask for it. No, sorry. We would have already added to the agenda at the beginning, so there are no other items. So could I have a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Is there a second?
Yes.
You can't second your own motion. Michael,
Oh, I thought you
second.
I'll second.
Enthusiasm is noted, but you can't do that. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Good night.
Adios.